February 2, 1872, Cleveland, Ohio. In a single night, 22 oil refineries vanish from America's economic map. Their owners wake up as bankrupts. Equipment worth millions of dollars is sold for pennies. This is the result of a secret operation that would later be called the Cleveland Massacre. By evening of that same day, a 33-year-old entrepreneur, John D. Rockefeller, controls 25% of all American oil refining. Within 5 years, 90%. And within 10 years, he would dictate fuel prices for 76 million Americans and begin expansion across the globe. Today, we will reveal the mechanism of the most sophisticated monopoly in human history, a scheme that transformed the American economy into a pyramid with one family at the top and millions of citizens as hostages of an energy monopoly. The 1860s, something incredible is happening in western Pennsylvania. Fountains of black gold, crude oil, are gushing from beneath the earth. The first oil rush in human history begins. Thousands of entrepreneurs build derricks, dig wells, construct oil refineries. Cities spring up in months. Millionaires appear in weeks. By 1870, more than 250 independent oil refining companies operate in America. Competition is fierce, but fair. Prices for kerosene, the main refined product, remain at reasonable levels. For ordinary Americans, this means affordable lighting, heating, the ability to work after sunset. Oil democratizes light. Now, not only the wealthy can afford bright illumination in the evenings, but one man looks at this chaos and sees opportunities, not for fair competition, but for total control. In 1870, a company is created that would change the face of American capitalism. Standard Oil Company, with a charter capital of $1 million. At first glance, an ordinary oil company among hundreds of others. But behind the facade lurks a revolutionary business strategy created by entrepreneur John Davison Rockefeller. He possessed a unique combination of icy calculation and fanatical religiosity. Each morning, Rockefeller read the Bible. During the day, methodically developed plans to destroy competitors, and in the evening, bribed politicians and lawyers. The son of a lumber merchant from a small town in New York State was consumed by an ambitious idea, not to simply profit from oil, but to control the entire industry from wellhead to gas station. Soon, he would create a business empire of a scale America had never seen. First move, integration. Standard Oil buys not only competitors, but also related enterprises. Railroad cars, pipelines, barrel manufacturing, retail outlets. Second move, secret agreements with railroads. Standard Oil negotiates special tariffs for oil transportation. Moreover, railroad companies begin paying Standard Oil for every barrel transported by competitors. Why? Standard Oil guaranteed them huge, stable shipping volumes, up to 60 cars of oil daily, while competitors shipped 2 to 3 cars per week. Railroad operators preferred guaranteed profit from one large client over uncertainty from numerous small ones. Competing with Standard Oil becomes impossible. By early 1872, Standard Oil is ready to deliver a decisive blow to the competition. Target, Cleveland. And the choice of this city is no accident. Cleveland had become America's oil refining capital due to geography. The city sat at the intersection of railroad lines connecting Pennsylvania's oil fields with consumers in the Midwest. It was cheapest to build refineries here and ship finished products. By 1872, 26 independent oil refineries operated in Cleveland, 1/3 of all industry enterprises in the country. These refineries possessed 85% of oil extracted in Pennsylvania. By capturing Cleveland, Standard Oil would gain control over a key hub of American oil refining. This meant the ability to dictate prices to the entire country. The plan was simple and ruthless. Over 3 months, company representatives secretly met with owners of all Cleveland oil refineries. The conversations follow one scenario. Each refinery owner is presented with a harsh ultimatum. You have 2 options. First, sell us your refinery at our price. Second, we'll bankrupt you within 6 months and buy the refinery for debts at 10 times cheaper. These are not empty threats. Standard Oil demonstrates its power through examples. Transportation prices for independent producers triple. Raw material supplies mysteriously get delayed. Wholesale buyers cancel contracts under pressure. Within 48 hours in February 1872, Standard Oil purchases 22 of Cleveland's 26 oil refineries. Average purchase price? 40% of real value. Behind the operation stood a man with iron will and absolute conviction in his righteousness. He sincerely believed he was making the world better by eliminating destructive competition and creating an efficient system. He donated millions to churches and charity, sincerely believing that wealth was a tool of service to society. But his vision of serving society included complete control over it. He saw himself not as a robber, but as a savior of the American economy from free market chaos. His motto was, "Competition is a sin." He believed that only centralized control could ensure progress and stability. Refinery owners have no choice. Refusal means guaranteed bankruptcy and complete loss of investments. Sale? At least partial salvation of capital. Within 3 days, Cleveland transforms from a center of independent oil refining into a branch office of one corporation. The Cleveland Massacre is only the beginning. Standard Oil perfects its model and spreads it across the country. Next target, Pittsburgh. Then, Philadelphia. After that, New York. One by one, independent oil companies fall. By 1879, Standard Oil controls 90% of American oil refining. By 1882, the Standard Oil Trust is created, the first trust in history, uniting 40 companies under unified management. The monopolization mechanism is refined to perfection. First, dumping. Standard Oil sells oil at a loss in regions where there are competitors, compensating losses through high prices in monopoly regions. Second, transportation control. Through a system of discounts and surcharges, railroads become allies of the monopoly against independent producers. Third, vertical integration. Control of the entire chain from extraction to retail kerosene sales. This gave Standard Oil triple advantage. First, profit at each production stage remained within one company. Second, the ability to strangle competitors at any level appeared, refuse raw material supplies, block transportation, or cut off access to retail outlets. Third, complete control over pricing. They could sell oil at a loss at one stage, compensating losses with profit at another. Fourth, industrial espionage. Standard Oil created the first corporate intelligence network in history. Trust agents infiltrated competing companies, disguised as workers, accountants, even partners. They reported on expansion plans, new oil fields, financial problems. Railroad employees passed copies of shipping documents showing competitors' transportation volumes for money. Telegraph operators intercepted commercial messages. Standard Oil knew competitors' plans before the boards of directors of these companies made final decisions. What did Standard Oil's monopoly mean for ordinary American families? In 1870, before the trust's creation, a gallon of kerosene cost 26 cents. By 1880, the price had risen to 35 cents. But the main thing? Choice disappeared. Standard Oil loved repeating its famous slogan, "Our goal is to make pure kerosene at a cheap price." Beautiful words, but reality was opposite. Monopoly allowed economizing on purification, using cheaper and more dangerous technologies. Cheap price turned out to be a myth. Without competition, prices only rose, and pure kerosene became increasingly lower quality, leading to increased fires and accidents in American homes. Standard Oil dictates not only prices but also quality. No competition, no incentive to improve the product. Kerosene becomes cheaper to produce, but more dangerous to use. The number of fires from poor quality kerosene triples. People die because the monopoly economizes on petroleum product purification, but Standard Oil also controls information. Newspapers receiving advertising money from the trust don't write about quality problems. Politicians financed by the oil monopoly block investigations. Over 20 years of monopoly, American families overpaid approximately $2 billion for kerosene, $60 billion in modern prices. Over time, John Rockefeller understands, to preserve the monopoly, he needs to control not only the market, but also the government. In those times, monopolistic practices weren't illegal. Antitrust laws would appear only in 1890, when Standard Oil already controlled 90% of the market. But the trust didn't rely on legal loopholes, preferring guaranteed protection through systematic bribery of politicians at all levels. From mayors of oil towns to Congress senators, the scheme is simple: political donations in exchange for loyal legislation. In the 1880s through 1890s, Standard Oil spends over $3 million annually on lobbying, an astronomical sum for those times. For comparison, a congressman's salary was $5,000 per year. The result is predictable. Anti-monopoly initiatives are blocked in committees. Investigations of trust activities are curtailed. Tax breaks for the oil industry are expanded. In those times, federal income tax didn't yet exist. It appeared only in 1913. Standard Oil paid only local property taxes and rare customs duties. As a result, the trust's effective tax rate was less than 2% of profit, while ordinary enterprises paid 8 to 12%. Standard Oil creates a precedent of American political system corruption by large corporations, a model that works today: money in exchange for laws. Essentially, the Rockefeller family actually turned doing business into conducting a bloodless war for asset seizure. They applied military principles: intelligence, blockade of enemy resources, alliance with third parties, coordinated attacks on weak points. Only instead of soldiers, lawyers were used. Instead of weapons, economic pressure. Instead of territories, markets were captured. By 1890, Standard Oil was not just a company, but a shadow government of the oil industry. The trust controls information about its activities. Official reporting is falsified. Real revenues are hidden through a system of shell companies. Journalists attempting to investigate trust activities receive threats or bribes. Competitors face mysterious accidents at their enterprises. Standard Oil creates the first corporate PR machine in history. Newspapers publish supposedly independent articles about the benefits of big business, written with trust money. A typical article in the Cleveland Herald from 1885 stated, "Thanks to Standard Oil's wise management, American families now receive pure kerosene at the lowest prices in history. The chaotic competition of past years led only to price instability and harm to consumers." In reality, prices had risen 35% and quality had deteriorated. The New York Tribune printed, "Standard Oil critics are frustrated failures who couldn't compete with superior organization. The trust provides jobs for thousands of Americans and promotes economic progress." The article was paid for by Standard Oil itself through an advertising agency. Chicago Daily featured letters supposedly from ordinary citizens. "I've worked at a Standard Oil plant for 5 years and can say, you won't find a better employer. High wages, stability, care for employees." These letters were written by hired PR specialists using fictitious names. Americans read about how Standard Oil lowers prices and improves quality, but figures show the opposite. Trust profits grow 40% annually with stagnating product quality. By the end of the 1890s, American patience had snapped. Journalists began publishing investigations about Standard Oil's activities. In 1902, a series of articles, "The History of the Standard Oil Company," is published, shocking the nation. For the first time, Americans learned the truth about the Cleveland Massacre, secret railroad agreements, political bribery. The entire country reads the articles. People understand. They had been systematically robbed for years by one family, hiding behind patriotic rhetoric about the benefits of large corporations. Protests begin. Boycotts of Standard Oil products, demands for congressional investigation. The largest protest occurred in October 1905 in Kansas City. More than 15,000 farmers and workers took to the streets, demanding destruction of the oil octopus. Demonstrators carried signs, "Down with the trust tyrant," and burned images of oil barons. Protests quickly spread to other Midwest cities where kerosene prices were particularly high. The anti-monopoly movement gains strength. But most importantly, a man appears in the White House who declares personal war on Standard Oil. September 1901, 42-year-old Theodore Roosevelt becomes the youngest president in American history after McKinley's assassination. Roosevelt is the complete opposite of Rockefeller. If the oil magnate built his empire in the quiet of offices, the new president fought in the Spanish-American War, hunted wild animals, read a book a day. Roosevelt sincerely believed in the American dream, but saw how monopolies were destroying it. He was convinced if bad trusts weren't stopped, corporate greed would lead to bloody working-class uprising. He repeated, "I am not an enemy of wealth, but I am an enemy of injustice." In February 1902, Roosevelt strikes the first blow. His Justice Department files suit against Northern Securities Company, Morgan's railroad monopoly. All of Wall Street is in shock. No one expected the president to dare attack the financial elite. Morgan personally comes to the White House to meet with Roosevelt and tells the president, "If we did something wrong, send your man to my man and they'll fix everything." Roosevelt looks him in the eye and responds, "That won't work. The law is the same for everyone." In 1904, the Supreme Court votes 5-4 to break up Northern Securities Company. Roosevelt gets the nickname Trustbuster. This is a signal to all monopolies. The era of impunity is over, but Roosevelt's main target is Standard Oil. In 1906, a titanic battle begins between the president and the oil emperor. The Justice Department files suit against the trust for violating antitrust legislation. Rockefeller tries to play by old rules. He hires the best lawyers, bribes newspapers, lobbies congressmen. But Roosevelt conducts open war. He speaks before crowds of voters, explaining how Standard Oil robs American families. These people turned business into war against fair competition, Roosevelt declares at a Chicago rally. They use methods that destroy quality of opportunity. We won't allow one family to control what belongs to the entire nation. During his 7-year presidency, Roosevelt files 44 antitrust suits. Standard Oil becomes the main symbol of corporate evil that must be destroyed. Two philosophies clash in mortal combat: centralized control versus equal competition, private empire versus public good. In 1906, the government finally files suit to dissolve Standard Oil Trust. Legal proceedings last 5 years, but the outcome is predetermined. The era of monopolies is ending. May 15, 1911, the U.S. Supreme Court renders a historic decision. Standard Oil Trust must be dissolved into 34 independent companies. Americans celebrate. The monopoly is defeated. Justice has triumphed. But it's too early to rejoice. The trust's division turns out to be a giant scam. All 34 independent companies remain under the same family's control through a system of cross-ownership and interlocking shareholdings. Formally, these were different companies, but the Rockefeller family owned shares in all of these companies. Moreover, forced division only increases total asset value. Before dissolution, trust shares traded at $375 per share. After division, the total value of received shares in subsidiary companies reaches $785, a 109% increase. Within a year after punishment, the Rockefeller family fortune grew from $300 million to $900 million. In modern money, that's about $27 billion, more than the GDP of the 40 smallest countries combined. John Rockefeller soon becomes the first billionaire in U.S. history. Antitrust punishment becomes the largest premium for monopolists in history. The punished companies begin coordinated expansion into New World regions, maintaining gentlemen's agreements about market division. The American people received an illusion of victory over monopoly, while monopolists received real wealth doubling. Today, Standard Oil Trust's descendants continue to dominate the energy market. ExxonMobil, Chevron, ConocoPhillips all grew from the corporation created in 1870. Over the century since the trust's breakup, Standard Oil descendants have earned hundreds of billions from American motorists. Every time they fill up their cars, Americans pay tribute to monopoly heirs through inflated prices. ExxonMobil, Chevron, and ConocoPhillips still use advantages created in the trust era: control over refining capacity, gas station networks, long-term supplier contracts. Formally, it's competition. Actually, it's a cartel of companies with common roots that avoid price wars and maintain mutually beneficial prices. The Rockefeller model became a template for other industries: vertical integration, transportation control, regulator bribery, creating an appearance of competition with actual monopoly. Today, the same schemes are used by big tech, big pharma, agribusiness giants. Amazon controls logistics. Apple, The device ecosystem. Google, information flows. Antitrust laws exist on paper, but corporations have learned to circumvent them. The Standard Oil story reveals a universal recipe for how one company can capture an entire economic sector. The recipe is simple and works in 3 steps. First step, gain unfair advantage. Rockefeller made secret deals with railroads that gave him discounts and even payments for transporting competitors' oil. Second step, methodically pressure competitors. Standard Oil sold oil at a loss where rivals appeared, covering losses through inflated prices in other regions. Third step, buy power. When monopoly is created, you need to bribe politicians and officials so they protect your empire from new laws and investigations. Late 19th century Americans believed in fair competition and free markets. They didn't understand they were witnessing the birth of a system where winner takes all and the strongest writes the rules of the game. Standard Oil proved, in capitalism without fair rules, the winner isn't the best product, but the best scheme for suppressing competition. The question isn't whether this history will repeat. The question is, in which industry it's happening right now.